Hello. Have you ever imagined what it must have been like to be a disciple of Jesus during his earthly ministry? A short time ago, I listened to a teaching series that was titled Discipled by Jesus. And one of the things I got from it was that though we may not be able to physically experience Jesus, his presence, um, he is ready, willing, and able to disciple us. And he wants us to have the same kind of disciple. He wants to disciple us the same way that he discipled the original 12. I'm going to read in Luke chapter 24, starting in verse 13. This is the story of on the road to Emmaus. This is almost immediately after he rose from the dead. Starting in chapter 13. Now, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth." So they go on to tell Jesus about Jesus, the things that just took place. And then I pick it up again in verse 25. He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scripture concerning himself. So in verse 15, one of the key things I want to point out here is where it says Jesus himself then came up and walked along with them. So here's Jesus after his resurrection, basically picking up where he left off, discipling. Then in chapter 17, he asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" Chapter 25 and 26, he says to them, "How foolish are you? How slow to believe?" And then in chapter 27, he explained all the scripture concerning himself. So he's walking with them. He's talking with them. In chapter 25 and 26, when he says, "How foolish, how slow to believe," he's giving them an opportunity he's challenging them to grow their faith. Then in 27, he leads them in a Bible study. So Jesus' pattern, when he started his earthly ministry, his disciples, he began discipling, and he basically has never stopped. Jesus discipled the 12 and many others up to his death. Here in this passage, we see him continuing on after his resurrection, and even after his ascension. As you go through the New Testament, his discipleship activities continue. So let me ask, what is discipleship? And I think Jesus would answer that by saying discipleship is a direct, face-to-face relationship in which we are led by, taught by, and loved by Jesus himself, just as the original 12 disciples were. Let me read for you Luke chapter 11, verse 1, where it says, "One day Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, 'Lord, teach us to pray, just as John taught his disciples.'" Why do you suppose Jesus hadn't taught his disciples to pray yet? Because they've been together now for a little while, and prayer is a pretty important thing, but yet he hadn't taught them how to pray yet. The reason that he hadn't was because he was waiting for them to ask. And as soon as they asked, he was ready, willing, and able with, when you pray, say, "Father, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come." He was ready. He had an answer. He was ready to go. But he was waiting for them to ask. And that's exactly where we are. He's just waiting for us to ask. And he wants to disciple us, just like he discipled the original 12.